Hello and welcome to the Getting Started tutorial on the Lightning Conductor Add-in. The first thing you would do if you wanted to use the Lightning Conductor is go and grab it from the SharePoint App Store. To do that, simply go into your site and choose Add an App. From the SharePoint Store, you'll be able to search for the Lightning Conductor. Select it, and then you'll be able to add that into your environment. Once the Lightning Conductor is added into your environment, you'll find it on the apps page inside your SharePoint team site. We can simply use the app using the application page, or we can go through and add the app as an app part on the page, and that's what we're going to do. So we'll click onto the page ribbon, choose Edit, and inside your web part zone, we'll simply go through and choose Insert and App Part from the ribbon, and you'll see the Lightning Conductor listed there. Now, there's a number of other web parts that you could add, including the announcements rollup, the documents rollup, and the tasks rollup, which are all actually instances of the Lightning Conductor. These are pre-configured, so all you need to do is simply add them and you'll see results immediately. However, we're going to add the Lightning Conductor instance, and that would rely on us to configure it to perform the rollup. So we'll select the Lightning Conductor, click onto Add, and now we can begin with its configuration. One of the things that I like to do is have multiple view instances inside the Lightning Conductor add-in instance on the page. So this allows me to do things like display tasks as well as documents or tasks timeline views and calendars and things like that as different views on the page, rather than having multiple instances of the Lightning Conductor on the page itself. So we'll simply click the drop down on the app part itself, choose the Edit Web Part option, and in the Views section, or the Views tool pane, we will click Enable Views and click onto OK. And once we've done that, in the Actions menu, you'll see the ability to create a view. Now, we can create multiple views with this option. If you just want to have one view, then there was no need to set that toolpath property. You could basically add one view to the Lightning Conductor. So we're going to go through and create a new view, and let's talk through each of the options available to us. So within here, there's basically 4 tabs inside the dialog box. The first tab, the App Part tab, allows us to specify a view title. So let's say we wanted to roll up tasks inside our view, so we could give it the name tasks, or we could be a little bit more descriptive if we're going to add some filters as well. So we could give the view a name such as tasks due today, or tasks assigned to me, or something to that effect, which is going to be more descriptive to the end user. We've then got the view priority. Now, the view priority, if we're creating multiple views, just allows us to specify which order the views will appear in inside the Actions menu, and we can choose which one is going to be the default view that loads when you hit this page. There's then a choice of data source provider. Now, we have 2 choices here. One is using the object model rollup engine provider, and the other one is using the search rollup engine provider. So anybody that's familiar with SharePoint online development will have come across the client-side object model, and that is basically what the top option is using. Now, as an app, that is restricted to the current site collection. So if we're going to roll up tasks or documents or any other SharePoint list for that matter, using the object rollup engine provider, you will be restricted to the current site collection only. That said, it's very easy to configure, and if that's all you need to do, then you can very easily get some results aggregated from different sites into the current site that you're in. The search rollup engine provider, that uses the search itself to return the results. Again, it's very easy to configure. We can simply display custom columns and things like that inside our view. The difference is that it's using search and not the object model. So therefore, you're not restricted to just the current site collection. You can in fact roll up content from anywhere inside your tenant based on your permissions. The major difference as well is that With the object model, you will see immediate results if an item changes. So if somebody went and updated a metadata property of a document, or if they created a new task or something to that effect, then you would see the results straight away. Whereas with the search Rollup engine provider, we're going to need to wait for that search reindex to occur, and typically that's going to be around about the 20-minute mark, but you don't have any control over that. That's going to be dependent upon your tenant. So for this particular one, we'll start off with the object model Rollup engine provider, and we'll do another example as well using the search Rollup engine provider. Beneath that, we have the type of view that we want to build. Now the first one is the GridView display provider. The GridView display provider doesn't need you to write any code whatsoever. You can simply go through and check the columns that you want to view, which we'll see in just a moment. And you can do things like add conditional formatting and multiple grouping, set sort orders, set filters, and all of that sort of thing, just simply by going through and configuring the view on the tabs that we're going to have a look at in just a moment. There are the other two options. We have an XLT display provider as well. The XLT display provider allows you to build your own view using XLT in a similar way to what you would do using the Content Query web part by Microsoft. However, we also have some built-in styles. So you can select the XLT display provider and you'll find that we have some calendar views, we have some announcement views and things like that that you can simply just go ahead and use, or you can also customize as well if you so choose. And likewise with the JSON display provider, this is similar to creating display templates in the content by search web part. The JSON display provider allows us to use jQuery and JavaScript and so on to build our view. And once again, we have some built-in views that you can just simply go ahead and use or customize, such as the tasks timeline view. So for this particular example, we're going to use the GridView display provider. And as we scroll down further, you'll see a couple of other options. One here is the refreshing interval. So if you want to rely on the page being refreshed to see updated results, then just leave that blank. However, you can also have the Lightning Conductor go and refresh itself independently of the page load time, and it will load based on the frequency that you specify here. And something you could use during your development is the statistical information, and that will just give you some idea as to how well the Lightning Conductor is going to be performing, so you can see how many results are being returned from your query and from how many lists, etc., and how long it's actually taking to display that. So all we've done so far is we've provided a view title, we've set the, or we've left the defaults for the object model and also the grid view display provider. So the next thing we're going to do is go onto the data source tab. And the data source tab is where we can select the sites or the site collections, if we're using search, that we want to aggregate the results from, as well as the type of list that we want to return. So in the drop down here, we can choose several options. We've got one option to aggregate content from the current site collection, or we can also go and aggregate from the host web or from other sites and so on. And this simply allows us to go through and drill into either sites or lists within inside this site collection, select them and make them part of the rollup. And you'll notice as we select sites that we can very easily just simply go through and select those, and that will be the scope for the rollup. So I'm going to choose the current site collection. Under the lists and item types, we're going to select the tasks list. Note that holding down the control key on your keyboard allows you to select more than one list type. And in that case, if we had two types of lists that happen to have some columns in common, such as the title column, the created date, modified date, and so on is common across multiple different types of libraries, then you could aggregate content from more than one list type. We can also filter by content type. So if you've created content types, so you may have a custom content type running inside the document libraries, you could go through and choose the document content types, or you could use your custom content types group and then specify the type of content type that you want to filter by. So for this particular example, we'll leave it as all content types. I basically want to return anything that lives inside task lists. On the right hand side, we have some filter options. We have the persistent filters and the dynamic filters are the two main different types of filter. The persistent filters are going to be configured here inside the dialog box, and a typical user wouldn't have the permissions to come in here and modify those filters. The dynamic filters do allow the users to apply the filters and change the filters, but only using the column headers, and that's personal to them. So you can use one or the other, or you can use both options. We also have a limit to the amount of items that are going to be returned, and you can leave that blank for unlimited, or you can specify an amount, say 1,000 items or something to that effect. I would typically recommend leaving it unlimited, but also bear in mind what can affect performance are things like the broken permission inheritance that you may have set on lots of different documents or list items that are being rolled up. So we're now going to switch across to the columns tab, and this is where we can begin to create our view. So you'll notice here that we've got all of the different columns available to me that come from the task lists within the scope of the current site collection, since that was the scope that I selected. And one of the things we'd want to display is the task name. So this is the title column, and you may see it appearing more than once, and don't be confused by that. As you hover over it, you'll actually see the internal name for that column. So one of them here is called the title, the next one down is called the link title no menu, and the one below that is just called link title. So it doesn't really matter which one you select, but that's the explanation as to why there are three. So we can select that, and I want that column to be the leftmost column of my view, so I'm going to simply drag it and drop it all the way up to the very top. We could display some other columns such as the due date, so I want to see the due date of the tasks. I also want to see the assigned to, and I want to see the percentage complete. So I can simply go through and select those columns, and one other I'm going to select is going to be the task status. So I'll select that as well. So once we've selected those columns, we can apply some sorting if we like, and just to point out to you that if we sort by more than one column, over in the top right hand corner of the dialog box, we can control the order of that sort. So do we want to sort by the primary column, which is the task name, followed by the percentage complete, or the other way around? So we can simply go through and set that for each one. We also have the ability to filter. So we could filter perhaps on who the task is assigned to. So we can click onto the filter icon for that. And you'll notice in here that the filter dialog box changes dependent on the field type for the column selected. So in this particular case where we're looking at the assigned to column, it has the me checkbox. So that would be a very dynamic view if we were to filter the tasks by who they are assigned to. So as each user logs on to SharePoint, they're going to see just their own tasks inside the Lightning Conductor. One thing to bear in mind is that if you are doing that, then the task could be assigned to multiple people, in which case rather than saying equal to me, you may want to say contains me. If we look at another type of field, we've got the percentage complete, so that's basically your numeric, so nothing special about that. If we come down to the due date, then you'll notice in there that we also have the ability to select today in the same way that we were able to select me for the people column. Now at the very top here, we've also got the advanced filtering, and the advanced filtering allows us to filter across columns and determine whether we're going to be using an and or an or. So if we select the drop down here and choose or, we can add several conditions, and one thing I might want to do, for example, is say that the due date is equal to today, or the priority is equal to high. And you'll notice here that we do go and obtain those choices from the choice columns as well, to save you guessing on what those values are going to be. So that will be a cross-column filter, and we can even nest child filters in there as well. if we so choose. Another feature of the Lightning Conductor is the ability to go through and create a calculated column. And a calculated column allows us to do all sorts of things. We can basically go through and create simple concatenations between columns, or we could display an image or something to that effect. We can even insert controls in there if we wanted to have a button that marks the tasks as complete or something along those lines. It really is unlimited to what you can perform. And we're going to have a separate tutorial on using the calculated column, so look out for that one. Under the Display tab is where we can refine our view. So one of the things we'd want to do here is basically go through and set the display format. So percentage complete, as a default, that's going to show as 0.5 as an example. It will show as a decimal for 50% complete. So we want to format that as a percentage, so we can simply go through and set that as the display format. The assigned to column, we can show the user's page, so it would hyperlink to that or set it to none. And for due date, we can choose our date format. So I'm going to go through and choose the short date. Notice that you can also overtype that as well if you wanted to set your own date format. We have some column aliases, so you can set those, and also column widths. We also have the ability to group by. So I'm going to group by the task status, and once again this works just like the sort. So if I was to group by more than one column, I can set the primary grouping and the secondary grouping. And there are no limits to how many columns you group by. We can choose whether or not we want to display the column. So we may have selected it because we want to apply some conditional formatting to the entire row based on a value stored inside that column, or we want to group by that column or something to that effect. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be displayed. So we can hide the display of any of those columns as well. We also have the formatting. So we can do some conditional formatting here. So what I want to do is click onto the due date, and under due date we will apply the formatting to the entire row, and we can select a different background color. We could make it bold if we like, and we can set the due date equal to today. So we could do that. We could also have other conditions, so if we can go through and add other conditions as well to show different colors for other different scenarios. So we'll save that conditional formatting. There's also summary functions, and once again we'll go and demonstrate those in another tutorial. As I scroll down, we can refine the view here too. We can set up pagination, so I can specify that I want 25 items per page, where I want those pagination controls to appear. And then we've also got some other bits and pieces as well, like which column do we want to link on to open up the item. So I choose the task name column. We can do things like show document icons and group by folders, and a few different refinements here that some of those are better suited to document libraries. So all we're going to do here now is click on to save. And there's our first view created. So notice that we've got the column names across the top. We have the dynamic filters switched on, so end users can configure their own filters. And we've also got the grouping, so we can see which tasks are completed, deferred, in progress or not started, and who those tasks are assigned to, and so on as well. And if we want to open up the item, then we've got the hyperlink to do so. Okay, so we're just going to create another quick getting started tutorial before we go on to some advanced topics. And what I'm going to do here is create another new view. So we'll click on to create view here. And this one is going to be a documents view. And what's different about this one is I'm going to use the search Rollup provider to bring back the results. So we'll select the search Rollup engine provider. And I'm going to leave it on the GridViewProvider. We'll have a look at some of the other views in just a moment. And we're going to go through and select the data source tab. Now, because we've chosen the search Rollup engine provider, you'll notice here that we don't have that same tree view to select where the content is going to be rolled up from. This is simply going to rely on the result sources that are already configured, or it gives us the option to create our own result sources as well. So I'm going to basically use an existing result source first of all, and then again in another tutorial we'll come through and learn how you can create your own result sources. So in the drop down, the result source that I'm going to use is the one called Documents. Notice, however, there are a few others that we'll just point out before we go on. So we have things like items matching a content type. So you can actually go through and specify what that content type is that you want to return. So there's the content type ID, and you have a lookup to the content types. So if I wanted to return contacts or events or whatever, I basically go through and select the relevant content type, and that will filter out the content for me. So for this example, we are going to use documents, and that's all we need to set. That's basically going to aggregate the results from everywhere. However, we do also have the scope tag, so we can go in there and select our scope if we want to. So this will allow us to specify where we want that content to be returned from. Under the columns tab, once again, we simply go through and select the columns that we want to see. So if I want to see the author of the documents, I can select it. And if I want to see the name, we just simply go through and set title. And we can also do things like show the file size and so on as well. So drag and drop the fields into the most relevant order, as we did last time. We can again apply sorting and filtering in the same way as before. And under the display tab, again, we can go through and refine the data formatting. So we can set the size formatting column, we can set the author, and we can also set the title. And for the title, I'm going to hide the file extension just to keep things looking neat and tidy. However, since I have hidden the file extension, I'm going to go through and show the item type icon. So we'll show the document icon type. Also, we'll set the link on the title column. And we can also do things like, do we want to open up the document directly or not? So if we don't open up the document directly, then we'll simply see the properties of the document when we click onto the item. So we have a choice there. We can also group by folders. So this actually makes the folders navigatable. We can expand and collapse them as we would do inside the document library themselves. So we would want to have those collapsed by default, and we can also hide any empty folders if we want to. So we'll hit save, and that has returned a whole load of documents. In fact, one of the things I didn't do there was set up pagination, so you can see that there's actually thousands of documents in the view. So let's just go back and we'll reconfigure the view to include pagination. So we'll click onto Configure View, and on that display tab we can specify the number of items per page, which I'll set to 50, and hit save once more. So we now have the pagination controls appearing. And we can switch from our tasks view to our document view, and we can see the 50 documents there with the pagination. So you can see there's 52 pages containing 50 documents each. Okay, so that's the initial tutorial. There are some other tutorials that I would advise you to go and have a look at. There's more on tasks, which will show you how to do some advanced filtering on tasks, and also some calculated columns, as well as a timeline view. We'll also have a calendars tutorial, so you can see how to aggregate calendars and display those calendars inside an actual calendar view. And we'll also have some on performance, calculated columns, and the summary functions. So make sure you go and watch those other tutorials as well. Many thanks.